Welcome to Jonesville Cemetery, located on Ushers and Longkill Roads in Clifton Park, New York. The Jonesville Cemetery is an example of the rural cemetery movement popular during the mid-19th century. Park-like settings were created by landscape architects where people could enjoy the views, fresh air, plants, and monuments. Cemeteries were like pleasure gardens where Victorians strolled and picnicked. The roads and paths in the Jonesville Cemetery wind through valleys and up hills. The large family monuments stand layered along the hillsides, with the ones at the top among the most elaborate. Here lies buried Rochus Kennedy, the founder of the Jonesville Academy, a private boarding school established in 1836, now the home of the Temple family. These remarks all came from a bit of history exploring Clifton Park cemeteries by John Shearer. The small community is named after James Jones, who ran the former Jonesville Hotel. James Jones and his family are interred in the cemetery. The hotel burned down in 1915. The hotel was opposite the Jonesville Country Store, which is near the Longkill entrance to the cemetery. Although difficult to see in this old picture, one can barely see the original burial vault in the cemetery. Today's Jonesville store serves as a restaurant. Here we see some of the other prominent members of the early community. Jonesville Cemetery was authorized for establishment by the New York State Senate on January 15, 1864, although the cemetery did not open until October 1st. The map of the proposed layout of the cemetery was filed at the county seat on June 23, 1865, and a copy is on file in DD 41 in the clerk's office. Early on, 252 remains and monuments from the small Union Grove Cemetery in Jonesville were reinterred throughout the Jonesville Cemetery. That's the reason for some markers dating back to 1799 to 1864. The founders named all roads, paths, and sections of the cemetery. There were Myrtle's Mound, the highest point in the cemetery. Poet's Mound, which overlooks the flats. Mount Hope. And a section called Mayflower Lawn. As the cemetery grew and the need for burial sites increased, the picnics ended. And the burial vault, which once stood in this spot, deteriorated and was removed. During construction of the interstate highway, referred to as the Northway, which links New York City and Canada, the state purchased space in the Jonesville Cemetery for the remains from two small private family cemeteries. In 2007, the association donated its 1864 historic map of the cemetery to the Clifton Park Half Moon Library for the community to see its original layout with each road and area named by the founders. This map is of exceptional quality. Through the years, the original map and the county seat was taped together as it began to deteriorate. Pieces of the paper appear to be like chips of paint, which fall off as the map is handled. The original signatures of the founders appear, along with a misspelling of the word cemetery. Unlike new cemeteries today, there was no formal layout of properties. Instead, families picked out a space in an open field and a deed was written. To help locate the actual site, a series of 10 numbered stones referred to as monuments were placed throughout the cemetery. Deeds indicated how far property was from a particular monument. Nine of the 10 monuments can be seen in the cemetery. Marker number 3 has been covered through the years by the cemetery road. To help define the cemetery later and keep the cows out from neighboring farms, a wire fence was placed on locust posts on the east and west sides of the cemetery. At some point, the cemetery had its own logo, which shows a seated woman and a standing child near impressive grave sites. All of this was imagined, as such monuments do not exist in the cemetery. On the western side of the cemetery is an original entrance known as the Pastoral Walk. The association owned property on both sides of the present stream. The original bridge, which was used by the funeral procession from a neighboring church, is gone. In the early days, property owners paid a perpetual care fee yearly to help with the upkeep of the property. In the 1950s, the association eliminated the fee because of the difficulty in collecting it and keeping track of the yearly fees. The founders of the cemetery all rest here, as do many who worked and lived in the area, as seen in a separate CD entitled Those Who Rest Here. The history of the cemetery is continually being written as families place their loved ones in Jonesville, a place of rest and peace.